The truth is out there.
It is one of the world's greatest mysteries, Scotland's legendary Loch Ness Monster. So does the lake creature actually exist? Well, if you ask one man, he'll tell you it is in fact no myth.
Every day it's flaunted in front of your face.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads.
You just choose to ignore it.
Belief can be a powerful force. No one knows that better than the people who are sure they've seen Bigfoot.
Real accounts.
He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
From real people.
Hundreds of people turned out tonight for the unveiling of a very controversial statue.
Yeah, it really is. The Satanic Temple of Detroit revealed the one-ton bronze statue.
It's time for you to take a swim.
I'm just excited to see my Lord and Savior Baphomet represented in such glorious Italian stone. I do hope his eyes gaze upon me, and that my allegiance is recognized.
In the dark waters.
So my wife and I decided to visit New Orleans for Thanksgiving this year. She had this bright idea of getting off the beaten path, and instead of staying in the Hyatt or the Hilton Hotel, which by the way I absolutely love, she wanted to Airbnb. So the house we rented was in a Bywater, which is walking distance from the French Quarters. And we were scheduled to stay in New Orleans for 4 days. And when we arrived at this property, it was absolutely amazing. Walking distance from cafes and restaurants, and it had this beautiful outdoor courtyard with a fountain. I said this place was dope, and it was dope, like something out of a movie. The very first night, we went straight to the French Quarters and drank our asses off, hand grenades. And we spent 3 hours in Rick's Cabaret getting lap danced. We had one hell of a time. When we Ubered back to the house, it was 4 a.m. And although I was drunk off my ass, I couldn't help but notice that there was a light on in the house. Now, in the back of my mind, I knew we had turned off all the lights, except for the one on the front porch. But I was too drunk to give a damn. So we just went straight to bed. The next morning, we struggled to wake up and struggled even more to rehydrate ourselves after all the liquor we had. By the evening time, we were back at it and headed to one of the jazz clubs to see Kermit Ruffins. We had been there about a good 2 to 3 hours. And by that time, my wife was drunk all over again. I, on the other hand, chose not to drink because we went to a club in the hood. At the end of the night, when we arrived back at the house, there's a light on again. And I thought it was strange. But nonetheless, I walked my wife into the bedroom, tucked her in bed, and headed to the kitchen to get a bite of the leftover burger that I had from lunch. After eating, I laid in bed, watched a little TV. But as I lay there, I couldn't help but get this feeling that I was being watched. It was weird, and it came on all of a sudden. You know how people say they get goosebumps when something spooky's going on? Nah, this wasn't like that. It was like my skin started to crawl. I just felt uncomfortable. So with that feeling, I decided to close my eyes and go to sleep. I figured I was just tired. And as I drifted off to sleep, my attention was drawn to this vent in the floor of the room. For some reason, I felt as if there was a presence there. That feeling lasted for about 5 minutes, and then I blacked out. Later that morning, I was here about at 5:30 a.m. I was awakened to what sounded like something scratching on metal. Cindy, my wife, was still laying next to me in her drunken coma, but I knew I heard something. And this being an Airbnb, and with this being an Airbnb, I decided to get up and take a look around, just to make sure nobody entered the house. I turned on the lights. What I saw blew my mind. Remember that vent I was telling you about? There was this black smoke or this mist coming out of it. First it rose very slowly, and then it started spinning and spiraling, and it created this upside down tornado. Then it separated into these two thin streams and started moving towards the bed. Now all this is happening in the room with the lights on. For a moment, I stood there in shock. Shit, I didn't know what to do. But that's when I realized this black mist was moving towards Cindy. I quickly jumped on the bed, grabbed her, and yanked her from under the covers. Her heels hitting the floor as I dragged her out of the bed. This violent motion woke her up, and I think I heard her. She started to scream, and while all this is going on, I watched that same black mist move straight back into the vent. Now my wife is drunken, hurt, and pissed the fuck off. But I look her dead in the eyes and said, baby, get your shit. We're going to a hotel right now. She insisted on asking me why. I told her I would explain it to her later. We grabbed as much as we could get, and we got the hell out of there. When we arrived at the hotel, I told her what I saw and what was going on. And during this conversation, she revealed something very, very frightening to me. You see, my wife thought we had made love that night, but we didn't. I had put her in bed, watched TV, and fell asleep. I'm convinced that we encountered an incubus. I never told the story to anyone, Dark Waters. But to this day, my wife will not sleep without me spooning her. My family home is very close to a cemetery. And no, this is not a story about me seeing ghosts. We see them all the time here in New Orleans. But as a kid, my friends and I would often play in the cemetery. Hide and go seek was our favorite game, and we preferred to play this especially after dark. This particular night, we were playing, and it was 7 of us. The cemetery took up the entire block of our neighborhood, so the games would take a little time for everyone to get caught. But eventually, you would have 6 people looking for the very last person. This time, I hid up high in the corner, right up under a cement cross. And for 30 minutes, I listened as each person got caught one by one. The spot I was in was well concealed and elevated, so I could see the entire cemetery from my vantage point. While looking out, I noticed something strange. There were 8 figures in the cemetery. My 6 friends, who were looking for me at the time, and 2 other larger people who were standing there at the very, very far end. Initially, I thought it was strange, but my 12-year-old mind just justified it, saying maybe these are some people visiting their family. The game began to get to its later stages, where everybody was finally searching for me. And after another 10 minutes of searching and not finding me, they all began to call my name, which was a sign for me to come out and take my rightful place as the winner. So I started climbing down. And as I'm climbing down, I hear someone else call my name. It was this loud, deep voice of a man. From my elevated position, I could see that all my friends were frozen in place and looking around. And the 2 figures that were at the end of the cemetery were now running towards them. I screamed, "Run! Run! Someone's coming!" As I jumped down from my hiding spot. When my feet hit the ground, I was moving. Byron, who's the oldest kid of us all, was the first person I saw. He was looking back in the direction the men were coming from when I passed him, and he finally started running. Both of us reached the far end of the cemetery, jumped the fence, and ran into the darkness of this open field. We stood there, and one by one our friends came jumping the fence. Some ran home, and others ran towards the light of the playgrounds a few blocks over. As Byron and I stood there in the darkness, we watched that cemetery fence. After a few more minutes, a man appeared along the fence line. This dude was big. He stood there looking around. Then he screamed my name. "Chris! Chris, where are you?" That's when Byron whispered to me, "Bro, we need to go home." So we tiptoed back out of the field, jumping the fence, and emerged on the next street. We never told our friends about what happened. We just figured they would think we were bullshitting. My life has been touched, an overwhelming amount by tragedy. A number of people near to me have died. So many, in fact, that I find it very hard to make new friends. So when I finally started talking to this guy at work, named Moses, I was pretty excited. He and I met one night while I was in my cubicle working late. I was sitting there with my earbuds in, typing on my computer. And after hours, our office is pretty dark. We have these automatic lights, and they had turned off over 2 hours ago. The only light left was the light from my computer screen and a cubicle lamp that illuminated my workspace. That night, I had to get a quarterly report out by the morning. Or my boss, who's a jackass, would be breathing all down my neck. I was there typing, and I heard what sounded like a garbage can fall. You know those small plastic garbage cans? That's what we have in our office. I stood up, peering over the walls of my cubicle. And when I looked out, all I could see was rows and rows and rows of empty cubicles. You see, my floor had 35 employees, and equally as many spaces for them. But other than that, I didn't see anything at all. So I sat back down and got back to work, this time leaving my earbuds out. I had been typing for a few minutes when I heard footsteps. I stood again, and there was this man walking down the aisle towards my cubicle. He was a middle-aged white man with grayish black hair. Working lady said, "Yeah, I got a lot of work to do." "I'm Moses, the night janitor. I'll be back and forth tonight getting things done. Don't let me bother you." Moses had on a gray dicky shirt and a name badge, so I thought nothing of it. Continued to do my work. Over the next few weeks, I worked a lot of late nights, and Moses would stop by and check on me, saying hello. We started to kick off these little conversations about sports and about politics. There was nothing weird about Moses. He's a normal guy, but he would ask some weird questions like, what do you think about those Bulls versus those Lakers? That Michael Jordan sure was kicking ass last night. I didn't have the heart to tell him, but Michael Jordan had retired years ago. And besides, I was really enjoying the conversation. Like I said, I don't have many friends. At work, I'm a bit of an outcast. Nobody really talks to me. My boss treats me real bad. Moses and I have been carrying on these conversations for about 4 weeks. Then one night when I was at work, this tall black man walked out the aisle, reached into my cubicle and grabbed my trash can. I asked him, "Where's Moses? Is he sick?" This man stopped, looked at me like I was crazy, and said, "That shit's not funny, bro." "What's not funny?" I asked. "I just saw Moses 2 days ago. He took out my trash." Then the guy got mad and said Moses died 10 years ago of cancer. He went on to explain that he and Moses were very good friends, and he really didn't appreciate me playing games with him. I told him, "Man, I only been working here for 3 years, and I've been seeing Moses almost every night." That's when he turned and walked away with tears in his eyes. The very next morning when I got there, I asked the secretary about Moses. She had been there for about 15 years, and she was able to confirm that Moses, in fact, was dead. So I said, "Show me a picture of this man." And it was the exact same guy. Since that incident, I haven't worked any more late nights at my office, and I won't be working any late nights again.